Career Readiness. We are pleased to have you join us for this event. Just a quick word on the Massachusetts Institute for College and Career Readiness. The Massachusetts Institute for College and Career Readiness, also known as the MICCR, builds the capacity for districts and communities to engage in evidence-based strategies and to improve college and career readiness outcomes. We are currently partnered with 15 districts in Massachusetts, commonly known as gateway cities, so communities with high interest and high needs in the both educational attainment and as well as the labor market. Today we are going to have a conversation focused on early college and increasing access, which will be led by one of our co-principal investigators, Scott Solberg. Just as a quick note on our additional principal investigators, we are a partnership between Boston University, the Rennie Center for Education Research and Policy, and Mass Inc., led by the representatives indicated on our slide, as well as developed in close collaboration with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, also under the direction of Carrie Conaway as well. So we are excited to have you join us, and I now turn it over to Scott Solberg.
Okay, well, thank you, Livonia. So today's topic, we're looking at early college, and it's a big topic that's been happening nationally as we're trying to find ways to really facilitate college and career readiness, and also start to decrease some of the student debt that's going on, but also to help students focus on building the competencies that they need to be successful once they enter a post-secondary degree area. And we're very excited to have Nancy leading us off, Nancy Hoffman, who's Vice President over at Jobs for the Future. She has some wonderful slides, and one of the things we'll be doing is asking her questions as we go along to kind of break it up a bit. But we're really excited to hear what you have to say, Nancy. We'll then be followed by Nuri Chandler-Smith from Bunker Hill College, and then finally Dana Brown, who's a principal at Malden High School. And we have a few others on the phone as well that will also be chiming in as topics come up. And I'll ask you, if you do chime in, to please introduce yourself so that people know who you are as we get started. But we are kind of rushing because we have a lot to talk about, so we want to get to Nancy as quickly as possible so we can get this started off. So Nancy, if you want to just get going, and I'll, if you would like, I can control the slides for you, and just let me know when you need me to turn them,
okay.
And we'll
Let me see if I can control them, because that makes life easier.
I'll pull your name up to do that.
Okay, great. So hello, everybody. I'm sorry if you're inside on this beautiful day, but I hope this will be useful to you. I should say that Nuri and Dana are champions of early college, and Dana's been involved in dual enrollment early college issues for a very long time. So you have some old hands here. I'm going to just see if I can advance the slides now. And not working yet, Scott. I actually had the great privilege and honor of being the lead nationally as early college high schools were developed starting in around 2001. There have been some very early examples, but nothing like what the Gates Foundation with Carnegie and Ford funded and asked JFS to establish. So I've been at this a long time, and so it's good to see the movement is spreading, and it's a particularly good moment in Massachusetts because we have the attention and interest of Secretary Pizer, of Chris Gabrielli, the chair of the Board of Higher Ed, as well as people in the Department of Education and the chair of that board as well. So a couple of quick slides about Jobs for the Future. If you can just figure out, Scott, how to keep up with me, that will be fine.
Yep.
So JFS is down on Broad Street, in some ways probably a bit of a secret in Massachusetts, although there are 120 of us, and we work across the country on workforce development and education. The thing that probably distinguishes us most is we try to work across all of the silos that are structured into our education and labor system. So across education and workforce, across career prep and academic prep, and also across higher ed and K-12. you can see our goals right in line with what this webinar is about. You can move on to the next slide. This is simply our how we work, and sometimes we start with innovations on the ground and build policy. Sometimes we start with both, but we do have a role in Washington and nationally and with many states in advocating for policies that support better outcomes and access to good careers for low-income youth and adults. Okay, let's move on. So next slide. So the origins of early college, I mentioned 2001, 2. The data here, we had evaluation data and could collect data for a number of years. And we worked initially with about 13 organizations, all of them nonprofit, some of them covering whole states, and some of them thematic. The results now are really what are the argument driving the expansion of early college and adaptation, I should say, too, across the country. So the original early colleges were all new, standalone, small schools that integrated up to 2 years of college for free with high school. They were designed for young people who were at risk of not getting a post-secondary credential, and this first set of 300 schools have really been true to that mission. So of the ones about which we could collect data from that initial and ongoing Gates investment, there are now about 300 schools with 100,000 students, and there are many, many more that we know very little about. The good news that makes us optimistic is the high school graduation rate is about 92%. College enrollment rate, 86%. Actually, these data are now a few years old. As we continue to monitor associate's degree attainment, about a third of students are graduating with a full associate's degree for free within 4 or 5 years of starting high school. And I know that the Rennie Center has posted a paper that I completed recently on El Paso, Texas, where they've had enormous success not only in helping students get associate's degrees in high school, but there are now about 1,500 young people who transferred as juniors to the university, many of them now in graduate school. The only other thing that I would say is, you can go to the next slide, the only other thing that I would say is that a high percentage of students in early colleges are students of color, about 75%, and the majority are low income. And you can see from this data, which is very strong, that young people are going on to post-secondary from early colleges at higher rates than the national average and substantially higher than among low-income students. Next slide. So, Scott, I don't know if you want to stop here. I'm going to now just talk about what the current iteration is that we're working with across the country.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. No, I'm excited to get down to the brass tacks of how you do all this.
Oh, well, I don't know, though. I think that's up to Nuri and Dana to tell you, although we do work on the ground. So in 2011, the Harvard Ed School issued a report called Pathways to Prosperity that some of you may know, which really argued that we aren't doing enough to deal with the 50%, close to 50% of young people of a variety of social classes who end up in their mid-20s without a usable credential. And so we were very much influenced in Harvard came to JFF and said, we'd like your support in working with states that were coming to them to say, can you help us implement some of the recommendations in this report, address the big problem of what we call the forgotten half. Mm-hmm. And so JFF with HGSE began to work with a number of states, and there are now 12 states, including Massachusetts, which was an early member of the Pathways Initiative, and a few more in the pipeline, who are all trying to at least meet the goal that you see in this slide, that rather than a full associate's degree, our goal always with early college was to figure out, knowing that not everyone would get an associate's degree, what was a good floor of college credits that educators and families could think were the best assurance that a young person would complete a post-secondary credential. So you can move to the next slide.
Yeah. So just to clarify then, are you focused then primarily on the 2-year college then? Is that what the goal is, or is it to help them decide between 2 and 4-year?
So initially, I think the Gates Foundation goal was a 4-year degree. We don't have the capacity to even know who has attained a 4-year degree. But since the fiscal crisis, the focus on the need to prepare a much more highly educated workforce with technical skills,
yep,
and with a lot of data that supports the really robust earnings for technical degrees, the Pathways network is focused on 2-year degrees. Let me just say why. First of all, many young people can't afford a 4-year degree. Secondly, the dropout rates are enormous. Thirdly, our goal at this point is to get young people through to age 20 with a usable credential so that they can get a job if they want to, or move on to a 4-year degree if they want to. We're seeing more and more employers step up and say they'll pay tuition to complete a baccalaureate, but our main goal is a 2-year degree with rigorous math and science and some capacity in key areas of growth in the labor market. So that's the answer there.
Okay.
You can see here just from this slide, we try to think about this as what's good for young people and what's good for the U.S. economy. And what we're hearing more and more from employers is that they need a pipeline of what we call young professionals, as they're called in the strong vocational systems outside of the United States, with skills that contribute to the labor market. And in fact, what we're seeing is young people are very adept, because of their familiarity with IT, in gaining the kinds of skills that employers even have difficulty retraining in their older workers. Next slide.
Why don't we pause there for just a second?
Sure.
So we're hoping you'll use the chat box down below to ask questions or make comments, or anything you want to chat about or ask us to respond to, which would be great. So please do use the chat box as we go along.
Yeah, and I can keep an eye on it too. And
Yep.
if we don't get through the slides, that's fine. Rather that you jumped in with your questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we created a very simple framework for the Pathways Initiative. And the blue box at the bottom is really the foundation piece. That is integrated and aligned career-focused pathways that start in grade 9 and go through at least the associate's degree. And as Dana and Nuri will probably tell you, and I'll say a little bit about, alignment is a word that's easy to say, but very hard to do. And if you read the El Paso paper, you'll see what it takes to make what I would call a nearly seamless system for students. So 9 through 14 pathways generally partnered with a public community college. We also discovered in our work with states, we're in about 50 regions now in the 12 states, that a big gap was that young people were not getting career advice, counseling, and experiences early enough. So we've developed a middle school curriculum called Possible Futures, Possible Selves that we're now piloting in a number of sites that puts young people through a sort of modularized and fun kind of set of problem-based activities so that they're beginning to think about IT, healthcare, STEM careers, and play some of the roles they might play as adults. The other pieces of this framework, because young people have so few work opportunities now, we've lost about half of the jobs that young people had since 2000, and only about 25% of 16 through 19-year-olds get into the labor market. And low-income students, it might sound counterintuitive, the poorer you are, the less likely you are to get a job. So we are working very closely to engage employers to provide work-based learning opportunities. And a big plug for Connecting Activities in Massachusetts, which some of you know, and if you don't, maybe Niall will talk about it. But Massachusetts supports the infrastructure, the intermediate infrastructure, which is the second slide on the second box on your right at the top, the WIBs and other organizations that link employers and educators. We know from this work across the country that individual teachers and principals cannot be knocking on doors looking for internship opportunities themselves. So that's why we need an intermediary structure. And then finally, you need committed state leaders and a policy environment. And wonderful as Massachusetts is, it's way behind in that regard. And that's why I'm very excited that the new Baker administration is very interested in this topic. And there are a variety of task forces now in place that are working to develop a policy set and a funding stream. And Dana Brown can tell you that he's served on committees over many years that have advocated for this, and I think we're poised for success.
Okay.
So next slide.
As we go to transition, we've got a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
First one from Lourdes. How are students with disabilities being included in the process?
I cannot give you actual, well, I can give you some examples. If I remember our data, I think it's about 15 to 20% of students with IEPs if you look at the national sample. Mm-hmm. What we do see, and Massachusetts' very strong vocational schools will confirm this, is that applied learning, especially for students with learning disabilities of various kinds, is much more successful with students who are disabled in some way than just theory in a classroom. It's a good question, and we could get you more information after the webinar.
Okay, and then a couple of questions I have around it as well. So the first one is are you mainly focused on career and technical education then as you talk about pathways, or are these in general at high schools as well?
Excellent question. So the answer is much broader than CTE. We use the term career-focused education. And in Massachusetts, it's particularly important to emphasize that because years ago, many of the comprehensive high schools had career-focused education of some sort. A lot of that disappeared when we were emphasizing and increasing students' achievement levels in math and English language arts. So, for example, in West Springfield High School, there is a big need in the region for more people in advanced manufacturing and engineering tech. The vocational schools do not have enough graduates, and so West Springfield High School has an engineering tech program partnered with Springfield Tech. So, okay. Great question, not just CTE, and in fact in Massachusetts, much broader.
So then one other question then is,
sure.
As you look at the pathways, yeah. I'm curious about how the pathways get determined, and I'm assuming with the slide we have up now that it's based on regionally what are the most high demand types of occupation.
Exactly. Yep.
Then the question is, are students choosing? I mean, what if their career pathway isn't, their interests aren't aligned with the pathways that the schools are able to offer?
So part one is right. We go into regions and we use real-time labor market data and several other data sources to look at what the jobs are. And there are relatively few districts with what I would call wall-to-wall career-focused programs. Long Beach, California is probably the one that is best known. And there are a wide array of choices for all students, from high-end science research pathways to agriculture and urban agriculture to the kinds of career areas you see here. So the answer to that question is nobody's going to get forced into a pathway. Most places that are starting out have one or two, especially if you're building in a comprehensive program, a comprehensive high school. What I will say, though, is the health career pathway is allied with the sort of typical STEM pathway, manufacturing more with engineering and design thinking. And our view about information technology is that high schools are seriously lacking in providing foundational IT skills for everyone. And almost every career requires them. The way we think about it is that all students need career information. Many students will pick a broad area of interest in high school, and some students will find their passion and stick with it from high school into the labor market. But there should be choices, and whatever you do, it should provide you with some understanding of what work is all about, how people work, what it feels like to work, and what an initial career might be like.
That's right. And then one more question before we move on then.
Sure.
Lori Silva was asking, is it possible to get the middle school curriculum?
Yeah, it is. Toby Baker Wright at JFF is the author, and I can send you her email. Or you can just go on the JFF website and look up Toby Baker Wright or Possible Futures, Possible Selves.
Perfect. Thank you. And then if you could find that and then put it in the chat box, the actual URL, that'd be awesome. Okay. All right, so we're ready. Any other questions? Keep writing and keep putting stuff in. We got Lori and Z writing some things, but
okay, great. So keep next slide then.
Oh, yeah, that's me. Sorry.
And you can tell me when to stop because there's more than we can get through, and I'd rather we had a conversation.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, we're working in 12 states. This has 40 regions. It's about 50 now. And the way we work is really building from what already exists and working particularly on the partnerships with community colleges and the curricular alignment. For example, in the Central Valley of California, we're working with a company, an agriculture company, and they're working with 6 middle schools, 6 high schools, 3 community colleges, and a university. And we've actually worked with their employers and the faculty and job descriptions and a lot of curriculum from around the country to back map the skills and outcomes so that they are broad enough, but they are responsive to labor market needs. And then that means there are pieces of pathways already existing in the Central Valley, but they need to be adapted. Even the community college faculty were very ready to see that they needed to do some updating to create a strong, for example, agricultural business or plant science curriculum. So you can see here the states that we're working in. We're also talking to several others at the moment, Rhode Island and New Hampshire. The lighter blue, we're working not with the full state, but with a region. So Columbus, Ohio, Madison, Wisconsin, and the Twin Cities.
So as you're working with the different states, Lourdes was wondering, and I think it's a great question. You mentioned earlier in Massachusetts, you're working with the state around connecting activities and work-based learning. Are you engaged with the states supporting this, or is it district by district?
So the first thing to do is erase the word district because we are organizing regionally because labor markets are regional and young people, if they want to stay in their community, are staying generally in a region, and community colleges are generally regional.
Right.
Critical, when we start working with the state, we usually come in through the governor's office or through the Department of Education or Higher Education. Massachusetts happens to be a bit of an anomaly. There's a ton going on the ground, and we're just putting together the state level steering committee. So absolutely, Lourdes, we start with the state. We usually do a number of convenings that bring together people across sectors: labor, commerce, education, higher education, state chamber, WIBS, and we often also start with an assessment of the policy set that's in place, because funding and sustaining these kinds of partnerships takes a strong state policy.
Mm-hmm. So given we want to go about another 5 minutes, I think.
Okay.
So if you think through kind of the pieces on here, it's
Yep.
very exciting what you're describing. And I think what I'm hearing, and maybe if I can summarize so far, is what you're helping to do is build capacity so that the youth are able to start thinking about career and the different pathways that are going to link up to those credential opportunities at a two-year
Yep.
college, as well as providing strong support for the work-based learning that's really going to help them, build more of an identity as well as some skill sets and
Yeah.
deepen their interest in those pathways. Am I on target so far?
You're doing just fine.
Okay, great. And then, and as you said, and I totally agree with it, it's unfair to expect that the schools themselves have the ability to establish these kinds of networks with the business community. And so by you're helping to bring in an understanding of here's our regional labor market, and then help bring together, I assume, some of these work-based opportunities and connecting them up. Well,
Yeah.
one question then maybe is how does that actually occur? I know there's a lot of online career information systems that have a place where the business community can write in all of the different work-based learning they do, and then the students can connect, or are you doing a more focused business-by-business model?
So that's a great question. And I've seen lots of money spent on chambers or county education offices putting a data file together where you can register your apprenticeship or your internship. It really doesn't work that way. The Boston Private Industry Council is probably the best organization, not probably, is the best organization in the country that serves this intermediary function. And these kinds of what we call glue or linking organizations are in short supply across the country. We're developing a whole set of them in California. Other places are repurposing or adding on to currently existing entities. Columbus, Ohio, it's very interesting. There's a terrific community college, Columbus State, and they are becoming the intermediary working with 18 school districts. Just to say a word about the PIC, the way they operate is that they have a staff in the schools, and they have a special staff that works with employers both to get them to sign on for a number of places for paid internships, but also the PIC knows the sectors and the students' capacities well enough to develop job descriptions, because the last thing employers want, they're very hard to persuade to let 16 and 17-year-olds in anyway. The last thing they want is for you to show up and say, tell me what you want to have done. They want you to come with a position description that says, this student has these skills, and here, because we know your sector and know your work, is the job description. We'll help you get that person to work. Mm-hmm. So that's the role of an intermediary, and it's critical. We might want to just take it. I think I have a slide here about Youth Career Connect, or maybe, yes, I do. Why don't you move down to the Massachusetts slides?
Okay.
And just skip everything else, and people can look at them when they want to, and we can watch all these pretty pictures.
In the files on the right, you can click on it. You can download all of the PowerPoint and all the materials as well.
Yeah, and in fact, there's information there about possible futures, possible selves. So
Okay,
keep going.
great. Oh, keep going, okay.
Yeah. I want to get to Massachusetts, or at least I have a blank screen right now.
Oh, okay, so I'm on Massachusetts. I just skipped a couple. I've got the key YCC elements in Brockton,
That's
Marlboro.
what I want. Yeah, that's what I want.
Is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm on that one now.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay, here we go. So in many ways, Massachusetts has very deep examples of 9 through 14 pathways, both in operation and under development, because about 2.5 years ago, JFF competed for a U.S. Department of Labor grant called Youth Career Connect, and there may be some people on the phone from some of these places. And we have been working intensively, and they've been funded. We had got about $5 million to spend over 4.5 years on these sites. So JFF is providing technical assistance, but working with the workforce investment boards and the high schools, the community colleges, and employers. And these are the key elements that we're working on. And I think this gets a little bit more concrete. And when Nuri and Dana talk, they can tell you about the actual really hard work of putting these things together. Mm-hmm. But these are the elements that you want to see in planning, and I'll just point to a couple of them. So a continuum of work-based learning opportunities. There's now a kind of standard way of thinking about this across the country, starting with light touch activities like job shadows, mm-hmm. and moving forward into a culminating activity that could be and should be a paid internship or apprenticeship.
Right.
And the other thing I would say that actually isn't here is that we very much encourage schools and community colleges to provide teacher externships, because many of the faculty, particularly in the general education liberal arts courses that students take, have not been in a modern workplace in many years.
Right.
So we're doing a lot to build understanding about the workforce of the future, the kinds of skills that are needed. And another thing that isn't here, and I will just say a word about this, is what we know about the job market and young people who come from low-income communities is they relatively infrequently have the kind of external network beyond family and community that can help them when they're moving into the labor market. And so we try to help young people make connections with employers that they visit so that when the time comes, they have a network that they can reach out to. It's sort of the embodiment of the LinkedIn idea. Yep. But many young people are really not in the position early in their lives to have a parent pick up the phone and say, gee, my son is really interested in chemistry, and I met your friend at a party 3 months ago who works in a chemistry lab. Can he come and talk? So we work on that as well.
Okay, so just 2 quick things then before we switch over.
Yep.
Can you go through the acronyms you have? You've got IDPs, CT would be Career Tech Ed.
Oh, okay. Individual Development Plan.
Okay.
So
is that like an individualized learning plan type of thing?
Yeah, they're called different things in different places. CTE,
okay.
you know.
Professional learning communities, and then what is ELT?
Extended learning time.
Ah, got it. Perfect. Thank you.
And PD, you know, and
professional development. Yeah.
We try not to do all this, but it's hard to fit things into
boxes. No, that's fine. Just sometimes we have. So Rose had a question I want to make sure we got to, and then we're going to turn it over. In Massachusetts, do you engage the junior achievement in this whole dialogue around pathways and such? It's, you know, they would be focused more on the entrepreneurial and business aspects?
Not that I know of. Nuri might know more because Charlestown High School, where JFF is deeply involved in creating an IT pathway sponsored by SAP, the big German business solutions company, is also at the point of working with Build, which
Okay.
has an entrepreneurship curriculum. But
Okay.
good point and a good resource.
Yeah, I think as you think about pathways, there's a lot of two-year, especially programs in business, but also the idea of focusing on entrepreneurial, that would be a really exciting piece as well. Okay, well, thank you so much. This is, you're still on the phone. You're not going anywhere.
Well, you don't know
thank you for this kind of intro. And then we want to go to Nuri and start the conversation from the two-year college perspective as you really look at kind of the dual enrollment component. We've heard now, we focused a lot on work-based learning as a key component. So Nuri, why don't you take it away and give us some ideas about what's happening at Bunker Hill Community College.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nuri Chandler-Smith, and I'm the Dean of Academic Support and College Pathway Programs at Bunker Hill Community College. Just for those who don't know much about Bunker Hill, I'll just say a couple of really quick things, which is that Bunker Hill is a very large, comprehensive, multi-campus urban institution. It's ranked in Massachusetts as among the 25 fastest growing public two-year colleges around the country. We have more than 14,000 students in day, afternoon, evening, late night, weekend, online, and self-paced courses. And we serve an extremely diverse student population. Over 67% of our students are students of color, and more than 50% of our students are women. We have over 900 international students from over 100 countries, and our students speak more than 75 languages. So it is a wonderful and diverse institution. And so when I talk about our dual enrollment work, I am talking about it in the context of a focus that is on low-income students, students of color, first-generation college students. That is very reflective of our general student population, and it is also a significant part of our dual enrollment population and something that we take great pride in. So our dual enrollment program has sort of two different components to it, I would say. We have a general dual enrollment program that enrolls over 700 students from area schools, and then we also have some site-specific programs. So I'll get into the site-specific programs in a minute, but just to talk about our general dual enrollment program, we have students that come to us from schools all over the region. We have homeschooled students. We have students who find us individually. We have partner districts and individual schools that identify dual enrollment as an opportunity they would like for their students. And so we have a number of relationships with institutions across the region. Our staff, we have a dedicated staff here at Bunker Hill who work with our dual enrollment students quite diligently, and they assist our students with everything from the application process, and our dual enrollment students follow the traditional college application process as it's part of the learning experience for students so that they understand what it means to go to college, and that's really a significant part of dual enrollment is the experience of going to college, understanding how it works, having that experience, and knowing that they can do it, and that is very transformative for the students. So our staff work very closely with the students on that process and on selecting their classes, providing wraparound support services, helping students to access tutoring if they need it, etc. And so those things are all very important components of what we do generally in dual enrollment for all of our students. But in addition to that more general dual enrollment framework, we also have some very specific partnerships with area districts and schools. So you can go on to the next slide, if you
just
would.
Before you do that, so you've got here advising on AccuPlacer. So are they taking AccuPlacer as part of applying for the dual enrollment?
Yes. So as I said, our dual enrollment students mirror the experience of all of our traditional college students. And so they fill out the regular application, and then they go for college placement testing. And their placement testing then determines the different courses that they are eligible to take.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And let me just say one thing. Part of that is that we want to ensure that the courses that we're offering to students are true college-level courses. So we don't ever change the curriculum, we don't change the content, we don't change anything about the experience of the course itself or the expectations for dual enrollment students, because we believe that our dual enrollment students can do the work, and they have shown us that that is true.
Okay. So what percentage are taking what would be considered remedial courses as opposed to getting full college credit?
You know, I'd have to go and look more specifically at the data on that. We are one of the institutions that does allow dual enrollment students to take developmental courses, although we de-emphasize that to the extent possible because we believe, and I'll get to this actually toward the end of the slides, we believe that it's important to work with our high school and community-based org partners to align curricula to try to avoid the need for developmental coursework entirely, because developmental coursework is really work that is supposed to be done in high school.
Right.
And so we would like to spend the time in dual enrollment offering students the opportunity to take college level courses. And so to the extent that we can work with our partners to ensure that students are college ready, we can offer more and more of those college level opportunities to students.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so here we are. Next slide.
So I'll just sort of quickly go through some of the different kinds of partnerships and structures that we have in place, and I'll just also make a note that on the right side of each of these slides, you'll see a note about the funding model that is used. And the reason that I've included that information and that we have all of these different funding models is because, as Nancy was alluding to earlier, we don't yet live in a state here in Massachusetts that fully funds dual enrollment. And so our community colleges and our high school and community-based org partners all have to be extremely creative about how we find funding for these programs. And so in many cases we can find grants, and in other cases we have to find other sorts of creative alternatives. And so I'll get into a little bit of that, and if anyone has questions about any of those funding models, then I can elaborate. But with the District of Boston, we have been able to identify some grant funds to do a number of programs, including offering district-wide courses at a central high school. And the reason that we do that is because in Boston, there are a lot of high schools. And so trying to create an individualized dual enrollment program with each high school is unwieldy.
Okay.
So instead, we decided to offer courses to anyone who is a student in Boston Public Schools so that they could then take dual enrollment courses. And we offer about 6 courses every spring semester that are open to all BPS students. And those range, there are a couple of developmental courses in English and math that are offered, and then we offer other college level courses. The courses that we tend to offer are, general education courses, highly transferable in the mass transfer block, because we want to ensure that students are able to access the college credit and take it with them wherever it is that they choose to go after high school. We also offer...
Do they also get to take courses on campus too, or is it all done off campus?
So the sort of general dual enrollment program that I talked about in the beginning, that is predominantly students who are coming to our main campus and taking classes here with college students. These courses with BPS, the district-wide courses, are at a high school, and those are cohort classes, so it is all students who are taking the class with other high school students from other BPS schools.
And as a grant fund, what they're paying for is the instructor, I assume? It cuts the cost down?
Yes, so the grant covers the cost of the instructor and the books so that students are able to take the class for free.
Got it. Okay.
So we also offer some specific courses with some partner high schools. So Charlestown High School is one of the schools that we partner with quite closely because they are so near to us geographically, and it makes a lot of sense for us to collaborate with them on multiple levels. And so one of those collaborations that Nancy mentioned earlier is the Seatown Tech program, which is a pilot program that has started with students in grade 9, offering them the opportunity to take classes in an IT pathway And so multiple partners have come to the table on this to support the students and to ensure that in addition to the college coursework that they're taking, that they also have the opportunity to have mentors, and in the future they will have internship opportunities. And so that pathway is structured so that in 9th grade they take one college course that is stretched over a year. In 10th grade they will take another IT course that will again be stretched over a year. And in 11th and 12th grade, they will begin coming to our main campus to take courses, and the students will have the opportunity to take 2 courses per semester, one continuing in that IT pathway, and the second course, general education course, probably English or math, maybe psychology, sociology, those sort of general education requirements that will be highly transferable. So that by the end of the pathway, students would have the opportunity to have earned up to 30 college credits, which is really wonderful opportunity, in addition to the summer enrichment activities, the internships, the mentoring, and so it's a really comprehensive career pathway program.
That's awesome. Now, just for time's sake, can we skip up to Malden so we can have Dana kind of chime in as well about the experience of doing this? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
There we go.
Although I will just make one quick note on one of the slides we skipped over, which is that we do, you can stay on that one, we partner with a number of community-based organizations that are providing opportunities to non-traditional high school students, and I think it's really important to note that because it's fairly unique to Bunker Hill. A lot of the other community colleges are not doing that. They're focusing on more of a traditional high school student population. So I just wanted to make that note because it's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
So Malden High School is one of our most wonderful partners. Hi, Dana. And we started that collaboration with just a couple of classes that were offered at Malden High School. And one of the things that's really unique about this collaboration is that the classes are offered at Malden High School, but Malden is a satellite campus for Bunker Hill. And so all of these courses are mixed enrollment, where we have Bunker Hill students taking the classes alongside the Malden High School students. And so this is a really wonderful model, I think, for both institutions because our students benefit and our faculty love the experience. And so this has grown quite significantly from a couple of courses to now over 50 courses that are offered on site at Malden High School. And now,
So let's get Dana's take on it then while we go. So Dana, what's it been like? And I see this asterisk called engaged in curriculum alignment work and partnerships. I'd really be curious to hear about that as well. But what's the experience been working with Bunker Hill?
The experience has been, terrific both for our students and the faculty and staff and the community, because as Nuri mentioned, because we're a satellite campus, community members are attending classes here. So folks who are going back to school mid-career, middle age, it's been tremendous. I think Nancy referenced early on, and I think it's really important to note that, alignment is so important. And Bunker Hill and Malden High School have started down that road, and we need to continue it. But the idea of aligning curricula, we had staff visit Bunker Hill and sit in on classes. Bunker Hill staff came to Malden High School and sat in on senior classes. So we're really trying to learn, the strengths and weaknesses of each other and how we can best, work to align our curriculum, our pedagogy, and help students. So it's really been a wonderful experience for all of us, I think.
So tell me a little bit about, as you talk about curriculum alignment, how are the teachers responding in relation to how the AccuPlacer, the AccuPlacer becomes that point at which have they built the competencies that they need to be college ready, not just did they get a grade in a particular class. Has that become a dialogue or part of the conversation inside the school as a result of all this?
Yeah, so one of the neat things that happened because of our alignment work and because of AccuPlacer, we are now offering a couple of courses at Malden High School that are Bunker Hill courses, if you would. Foundations in math, foundations in algebra. We just took the curriculum that Bunker Hill was using in their remedial classes. We're now offering them at Malden High School to students who, if they get an acceptable passing grade, can skip the AccuPlacer and go right into Bunker Hill and skip over the remedial math class. So we're only in our second year of doing that, but it's a neat way of, the high school staff figuring out, okay, this is what we need to do different, this is what we need to do better to help our students.
Well, that's exactly right, and it becomes exciting. It's also exciting how, as a high school, you become a community resource when you're offering all of this right there in the local community. It really, I think it changes the perception of what the high school is all about. I'm just going to ask Niall if he has any comments or questions based on what we've talked about. I want to keep the conversation going here with Nuri and Dana, but Niall, do you have any comments or things as you've been listening to all this from the state perspective?
Well, from the state perspective, there's not a ton of money that we have to kind of influence this type of behavior. There's some, money offered through the Department of Higher Education on dual enrollment, which helps to fuel a lot of these. I think colleges do a great job in using a small amount of money to really make things happen around dual enrollment. Mm-hmm. But this has really been a local initiative. In a local control state, you need smart people like Principal of the Year Brown and Nuri and others to really help drive this agenda. And we have great stuff happening all across the Commonwealth, but I cannot take credit for any of that.
Okay. So we also have someone from Brockton, Lori. Can you jump in a little bit and just talk about how Brockton, I noticed there was a slide back here that you've been heavily involved in a lot of these different activities from JFF and all, but what's going on in Brockton around these kinds of activities, both work-based learning and or the whole issue of dual enrollment?
Yeah, we're actually trying to combine, unite the two, work-based learning and the college and career readiness aspect with dual enrollment. We're basically, it's our first cohort year that we've had students enrolled in the career readiness program. It's called Youth Career Connect. And there are 3 distinct pathways that they're being exposed to. And by the time they reach their junior and senior year, they'll be taking career dual enrollment courses. So the 3 pathways are healthcare industry, advanced manufacturing, and information technology. So. Right. This year in particular, we're working quite closely with Massasoit on that curriculum alignment piece, which is huge, because historically we've found a great many of our students, when they graduate from high school and they go on to, whether it be a Massasoit or a 4-year school, a lot of them end up having to take developmental courses. So we're really trying to stave that off so that students, by the time they do reach their junior year, they'll be taking college credit-bearing courses, not developmental. Right. So we're really working quite heavily with the college to look at our curriculum, look at their curriculum, and figure out how we can align it so that our view of proficiency is the same as theirs.
That's great, and I think that's one of the exciting pieces that's probably an intended and unintended consequence of dual credit is really taking a look at the curriculum on both ends and trying to align them. So I think it's very exciting to look at that. Yeah, now I think we may have already, but I know soon we're about to lose Nancy, but please email her. I noticed that we haven't gotten the middle school curriculum up yet, so I'll ask Livonia to email that out to people separately if you haven't found it already online, just so we can get that to you all. So some other questions that you might have, you certainly use the chat. I think what I'm interested in, it seems like we've got really 2 components, which is around from the work-based learning, it feels like we're building a talent pipeline that's going to be aligned with the local, regional, work opportunities, and that's certainly critical. I know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is very interested in this because we have a number of businesses in our regions that are really looking for a talented workforce. And then certainly there's the issue of the academics in terms of helping people really build the college and career readiness skill sets that we would see. What's interesting about this, and I don't know if those of you that are in the schools can talk about this, but I'm curious about where the student is in driving their own process. So yes, we need to support the community needs, and we need to provide it, but how does the student get the chance to really drive themselves towards pathways that may not be represented in the current learning opportunities, but enables them to look at both the 2 and the 4 years viable options? I don't know if either of you, between Malden and Brockton, if these are issues you've addressed or if they come up. I'd be really curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
So from Malden's perspective, I think schools in general and Malden, we're doing a much better job on the college and career readiness embedded in our school curriculum, workplace training, job shadowing, things like that. But when you start talking about dual enrollment and opportunities at 2-year and 4-year college levels,
right,
it really becomes a financial issue. And students in urban areas may not have the support networks that are needed, may not have the finances to go out on their own and find opportunities for 2- and 4-year courses. So while schools are doing an excellent job, and Niall's crew at DESE has done a wonderful job of bringing resources into the public schools around college and career readiness and workplace training, things like that, actually getting out and taking dual enrollment courses is a financial issue, and that's where we really need help at the urban level.
So that's your bigger challenge is how do we have equity of access?
No question about it.
Okay. Lori, what about on your end?
Can I just add one thing to that that we've been experiencing a lot of, which is that in addition to the financial struggle, a lot of the students that we work with partner schools are struggling with understanding how dual enrollment is relevant to them and how college is relevant to them in general. And so I think really translating, that and helping our partner schools to create a college-going culture is one of the things that is really critical to ensuring the success of this movement and the expansion of dual enrollment and providing greater access to students. One of our partners, Madison Park High School here in Boston, our students there struggle with that. We have funding in place to provide dual enrollment opportunities, but a lot of the students are struggling to understand why this would even be beneficial to them. And so until we learn to translate that for them and to help them to make the connection to what their next step will be and to how that applies to their lives in a very real and tangible way, we'll continue to struggle to provide greater access to those students.
And that is the context of the question I was asking, that when we get focused on providing things for students like job opportunities, work-based learning, and all of this, if the student isn't driving the process, then they're not going to see the connection and relevance to their life goals. And so I don't know that it's just a college-bearing culture. I think it's also really enabling and providing opportunities for the student and the family to learn about the world of work and the opportunities that are there, and in doing so, learning the different pathways that it takes to get there, which includes what they're doing in the high school as well as the dual dual credit opportunity. So I think that was exactly my question. I think we spend a lot of time setting up structures, and we forget that there's a lot of work we have to do to help individuals, in this case youth and students, really see and understand, as you said, the relevance and what the purpose is, and that's really a personal issue that goes on.
And one of the things
I do want to I'm sorry. I'm just noticing that we are close to time, and I did want to make sure that Francie's question got addressed. She wanted to know about the opportunity to engage in curriculum alignment, whether or not that would extend to some of the other Boston public schools, as well as the programs that work within the Boston public schools.
Yes, absolutely. So, we've engaged in curriculum alignment with some of our community-based organization partners, and we are about to begin a process of curriculum alignment with Madison Park High School, and I think that will continue with other schools within BPS. We're also thinking about trying to do some of this work more in a collective format so that we're not trying to align curricula with each school individually, which could take quite a long time, but maybe bringing more schools together in various regions to try to align the curricula and to really have a rich conversation between high school and college that I think doesn't happen often enough.
Okay. Well, I think, Livonia, do you want to take it from here? I think we're right at the end.
Sure. So I just want to extend a sincere thank you to our presenters for all being on the line. It was a pleasure to have you and a very rich discussion. For our attendees, I just want to draw your attention to the files pod that's on the right-hand side of your computer. All of the materials that we've discussed, some of the presentation slides, as well as several of the reports that have been referenced, are available there, and we are reaching out to get the middle school curriculum, and we'll send that out when we send the webinar link with this recording. We hope that this will be just the start of the conversation. As you all are moving forward, if there are further questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to the MICCR, as well as I know that some of the contact information for our speakers was left on the website on the PowerPoint, so such as Nancy Hoffman. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us at all. Again, thank you all for your time and for being with us.
Okay, thank you, Livonia.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks very much.